Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Welcome to this episode brought to you by our Maxillary Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. Today, we have a very special guest. He is Daniel Wrene from Finance for Physicians, and his company is called Wrenne Financial, and you can find him at wrennefinancial.com. We have a great conversation with Daniel about designing your financial life. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you'll get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hello, everybody. I'm super excited today. We have Daniel Wrene today with us. He is a financial advisor and creator of the Finance for Physicians podcast. He loves helping people use their finances to live better lives, especially physicians. Ultimately, he wants to live a life worth imitating and help others to do the same. Above all, he values his faith in Christ and his family. Most of his spare time involves wrestling with his boys, Noah, Henry, and Andrew, coaching soccer, and spending time with his wife, Allison. He didn't tell us here in his bio that he also volunteers, and we can talk a little bit about that. He's volunteering. He actually came from volunteering today. And it also should be noticed that he has a previous hot sauce obsession. I don't know how that helps if he takes his clients for hot sauce eating or something like that, but we'll find out shortly. So thanks, Daniel, for being here. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here. I'm doing well. Yeah, and I'm wearing a baseball cap, and I guess y'all can't see me, so I'm all casual.
No, they cannot see you.
Yeah, it's a casual day for me. I started the day out and about, and it's really hot here today. It's like 95 and super humid. So,
can you tell them where you are?
I'm in Lexington, Kentucky. So it's not always hot like this. So we're kind of not used to this heat.
And what were you doing today that you're wearing that cap backwards and that t-shirt?
Yeah, so I volunteer it's called the Lexington Rescue Mission, and it's a homeless shelter here. And I do their outreach program, which basically we're out on the streets interacting with homeless people, which is awesome. It's amazing. I've done all kinds of volunteer work, and this has really resonated with me because it's in the real, I mean, you're in their world. You're kind of stepping into their world. Typical volunteer work, it's like, I'm going to help sort stuff, or I'm going to sit there and wait for them to come to me. This is like we go in and hang out with them. And it's not like we're not pushing anything really. It's just kind of hanging out with them and getting to know them, and they're real people. And you realize that, and it's been really good.
Do you help them with their finances in some way? Have you had the opportunity to do that? Like direct them?
No, not yet. And I don't know that I will. I think there's a lot of steps they need to take typically before they start being proactive with their finances. It's more like, there's a lot of steps usually. So
there's recognizing the problems that they have.
And usually there's deeper problems. But, I was telling we were talking earlier about a story of a guy I was talking to on the streets today, and he has a drug addiction. And the cool part about this conversation is the guy's like ready to fix it. But he's like, I got a drug problem. And he told us that. We didn't really have to ask. And he's like, I'm ready to like get help. And the guys I'm with who are like veterans of this thing, they're like, that's where it's at. Like, you don't see that very often. And when that happens, so they were getting them in a program, like on the street in the moment. They're like, when you get that happening, you got to act on it, which is so applicable to all the stuff. So we're going to be talking about finance today or whatever you want to talk about really, but it's so applicable to so many areas of life.
Well, we're going to talk about actually, I don't mean to say that the situation is similar and like it's very far away, but it's certainly a lot of problems with homelessness is mental issues. And with physicians, which is what we created this effort, is a lot about having problems with mental issues through burnout, not feeling in control, being overwhelmed. And what we see in our mastermind is when physicians really recognize like that homeless did that he needed attention to his drug addiction problem, is that once physicians recognize they have a problem with burnout and control, that's when they can get to programs like ours and then get control of their lives again and regain and retain control of their physician lives. And one of the aspects that we discuss a lot is finance, right? Because we can go through medical school and we don't really have financial education, to the point that sometimes, as you were saying in earlier conversation, that they come to you as a financial advisor and they ask you for things that would be probably unreasonable from the get-go, instead of like having a process to get ready. Before we get to that process with you, with what we want physicians to know when to come to somebody like you, tell me a little bit about how you became involved with physicians precisely for financial investments. What's the story behind you being a physician financial advisor?
Yeah, so I started out in the industry selling disability insurance at an insurance company, and there's only so many people that buy disability insurance, like one of which is physicians. And so I was working with basically physicians, attorneys, some business owners. Those are the type of people that buy that financial product. And I got to work with all the different professions, and I really resonated with physicians, and I enjoyed, and I started to kind of get into financial advising within that world, which was part of the problem with it, is because that's why I left that industry, is because there was a lot of conflicts of interest with advising and selling products, which maybe we can talk about later. That's a problem. And I was doing that, but I was able to experience working with physicians and I enjoyed it. And I realized, I want to work more with them, but I just need to get rid of these products because it's causing me to kind of lose sleep and it's clouding our advice. So I left and started my business and basically went all in with working with strictly physicians and helping them kind of through that money mission, money life, and all that sort of stuff. We just got rid of all the products.
So that takes me to one of my favorite words, I have to admit, which is called fiduciary.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the term fiduciary? What's that versus non-fiduciary?
Yeah, it's kind of sad that I have to explain this, but our industry, fiduciary is like basically a professional standard where you have to act in whomever's best interests. And so you have to kind of like put them at the top in their best. And so when you're not a fiduciary in my industry, the other standard is called suitability. And so that's basically just like finding a pretty good solution. It doesn't have to be the best. It can be just like suitable is the word. So like a suitable solution. It's like good enough solution. So as financial advisors or financial planners or financial services people, they're either operating as fiduciary, which is like they legally have to act in your best interest, or they're operating as suitability, which is like they just have to provide okay stuff. And so the confusing part about it, well, if that wasn't confusing enough, the confusing even further part about it is most advisors are both, and they just swap back and forth, and if you ask them, they say they're a fiduciary because sounds better.
So from my point of view, like I'm going to hire somebody like Daniel. First, I would like to look for that word fiduciary, and
all the time. You want them
all the time.
All the time.
And then besides that, for me, what I've looked is people who are not really necessarily affiliated with the particular company. This one you're starting, like later on when you have like certain amount of money, you're a different category, then you can go to these different areas yourself looking for investments, particular investments in some companies. But at least to organize for somebody who's starting, a fiduciary, we pay a monthly or a yearly fee. And then they will tell us, they will organize, they will look at all our investments or finances and everything and tell us where we are without really having to sell us a product because they're going to make a commission on it.
Yep.
Is
a fiduciary has to act in your best interest. It doesn't mean they can't sell products. So that's That's confusing too.
But that's the part that I try like to get somebody who's not necessarily like just affiliated under a company, under one sole company. They only have this set of products for you.
Right. If I was talking to my brother about like hiring a financial planner, I'd be like, they have to be a fiduciary. They can't sell products. Preferably you know what you're paying and you can tell very clearly, like so that you can't forget later. And it's transparent and then the services are clear. And then they have a whole bunch of people that are just like you. Like that's the kind of the core things I would tell them to look for beyond just like you get along with them. I mean, like that's always desirable too.
So that was the due diligence to hire a fiduciary financial advisor.
Right. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. And now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of those. I mean, you kind of have to look a little bit. So you have to know at least enough to kind of screen them. So
luckily we have you one of them, right? And then suppose that, oh my goodness, I'm a mess. I just graduated or I'm working for this office. I've been working for a few years now and I want to come to you. How should I be like ready to come to you? What do you want me for our first interview to have ready for you?
I think the number one thing we've already talked about, we're going to talk about it again, is ready. They have to be ready to kind of turn the corner. So a lot of people, even people that hire us and we don't quite realize it, maybe they're not quite ready to do what it takes to kind of put in some work into their finances. So you have to be like ready to plan, ready to be serious about your finances.
You have to work. You're telling me that I have to work to do that?
Yeah, you got to put in time into anything. Same thing as your program. You got to dedicate some hours. And sometimes people are like, no, I'm not ready. Especially, so I think of me as like a 22-year-old or something. I was like not interested in that. I would have been like checked out. I'm like, no, I got this. So they have to be like ready to work on their finances. And they, kind of have to have some respect, I guess, for third party. Like sometimes people are, thinking back to me as the 22-year-old, overconfident in themselves. Like I heard a buddy describe it like competence-confidence ratio. So like maybe their competence is low, but their confidence is high, but they're not quite realizing it. So we can't really deal with that. Like we're not going to be able to provide much value and usually those type of people don't seek us out. So the people that seek us out and are ready are the ones that are ready to get help. So you got to be ready to get help basically. Beyond that, like we can work with that. Like we can help. So people are like, do I have to be organized? Well, no, I mean, that'd be great, but like you don't have to be organized. A good financial planner will help you get organized. Like that's part of their services. Do you have to have investments? No, not necessarily. Like does your stuff have to be a certain complexity factor? No, I mean, no, not necessarily. We prefer working with people like earlier in life, ideally so that it's before all these big decisions start happening. So I think the big things are, being ready to move forward and ready to get help.
Okay. So I'm ready. I'm ready to sign up with you. Then we have these things. And should I bring my partner? Should I bring my spouse? Should I bring somebody to the meetings with you?
Yeah. Well, I think this is a personal preference. Or I know it's a personal preference. Our philosophy in planning is that like a couple is one unit. Like we see a couple as like one unit. So because of that, we're going to say, both spouses need to be involved. Like we kind of view it as one plan. And so not everybody views it that way, and that's okay. So that's kind of our view. So if you're along that frame of thought, then yeah, you need to involve your spouse. Like that's kind of a prerequisite, like not in every single meeting, but like they need to be on the same page because they're going to have equal input into the plan.
And what have you seen with physicians who come? They say they're ready. What are the most common maybe misconceptions they have when they come to you? that they were not expecting, or something that you have to work a little bit in their ideas of the process of working with a fiduciary financial planner?
I think the number one thing is they're not ready to talk about values and vision and purpose like we do. I think that surprises them sometimes, catches them off guard. They're like, I just wanted you to help me select how much I should spend on my house. And now we're talking about like what's most important. So sometimes that throws people for a loop. The reason is, we've talked about this already today, but like the reason is because in order to do a solid plan, you have to start with like, what's most important to you and where do you want to go? And the house, for example, like we need to know, how does that rank in all the other stuff in life? Like what's most important to you? Is that pulling you like away from your values or towards your values? And the only way we can know that is by having that kind of foundational discussion to kind of clarify what that looks like. And then we're going to kind of work on the house thing. So I think that throws people for a loop. And I think a lot of people haven't gone through that ever before. So it's kind of like awkward, or they're like, oh, nobody's ever asked what my values are, like, or what's most important. I hadn't thought about it in a while.
What would a value have to do with me investing on a business, on a house, on stock options or anything like that? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah. So like on a business, for example, investing in a business, especially if you're going to be involved, like that's you. So I can talk about my business, like that's me. It represents me, and I'm able to kind of like shape it around my values. So we already mentioned me doing the homeless shelter volunteering. So like that is an opportunity to like, it's on my calendar. The people I work with see that I went to do that. We even have like a community service day that we've created for our employees. It's a way to kind of implant your values and further your values and live into your values. Say you're deciding a job, like, if one of my values is like spending time, like, solid time, undistracted time is what I'm trying to say, with my children and my wife. And so if I'm, seeking out a job that like really is going to take a lot hours wise, like that's pulling me away from like that value of like spending time, like quality time with my family. Like if I'm constantly on call, like that's going to pull me potentially away. So everybody has different values. And it's something we don't think about every day necessarily, especially if we're just running.
So as I understand, and we've seen this in our mastermind, like defining your values will define the priorities, where you put the money and where you put the effort. And if you decide to invest on X thing, that means many different things. Like one of them would be like you're taking money away from something else that might be more valuable to you, that you should have thought about first before investing on that thing, maybe. Yep. The other thing is that if also what the expenses would involve of investing of that thing, like if you decide to invest in this wonderful, beautiful home, you have to understand that what an asset is and what a liability is, and how you're going to be having to save for that and all that stuff. So your values come there.
And what's it taken away from, like you mentioned? Like
exactly.
If you want to travel, for example, or give money to a cause, or have flexibility or independence from work, like buying more house has a directly negative impact on your ability to be financially independent. Not that
and
it's
even
bad.
Buying a house at all, because some people, for example, there's this couple, they're Leticia Alto and Kenji Asakura. They teach physicians how to do multifamily homes, and they don't own a house of their own. They rent.
You don't have to.
And the reason they rent is because they take that money from that house to invest, which I didn't know at the time that I purchased my house. I would have probably done that. We have this thing in our minds that we have to buy. We're so ready. I'm telling you, like when we graduate medicine, like we're so ready to have that reward of the big house, the big car, that, like the promised land, right? But we're not taught about financial education, and we might have, based on our values, decided to take that money and invest it on something that's going to give us passive income, so that then we can be more time with our family.
But
so
the house is such a challenging one, because it's like, I've never had anybody be like, I mean, I have maybe had some flavor of this, but most people are not like, I really value like having a house. Like that's number one on my list. Like, or when I'm old and looking back, it's really important that I had this specific house. Like it's not, usually it's like, I want to make sure I spent time with the people I love. Like that's the most common one. So people don't, when you don't go through that exercise and you buy too much house, it's actually, you don't realize it, but it's pulling you away from like spending the time with the people you love. I was just talking with a physician the other day that's retired, and he's like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard and spent so much time trying to make more money to have nicer things and not spend time with my family. Like buying more house means you have to work more, which means you have less time to spend with your family. So if that's a value, you got to weigh those two things. Not that not that buying a nice house is a bad thing. It's just weighing the alternatives.
Yeah, how much house you want to buy, and that's the thing. So we are down to the house. We bought or didn't buy a house with you, and we are organizing our finances. Let's talk about investment, like going to invest. How does that process look to you, like for most of your clients when they're starting?
Yeah, I think investing is a big space. Like there's a lot there. Like there's hundreds, thousands of books within that topic in itself. It's kind of like medicine almost.
But shouldn't
it's like
it be just easy? Like, oh, I want you to invest my money, Daniel, and then give you my money and then tell me just how to do that?
It could, it could be easy. You can kind of make it easy, but it is not. It is very complicated. And so, if you're doing it yourself, you got to read the books and kind of dig into the academic and understand what the options are so that you can pick, the best option for you. And what happens is, so somebody like me is going to be like, make sure you have lots of options because we want to select the best options in whatever given. So, you can say like retirement plans or like investing in real estate, like either way, we want to have a lot of options so you can select the best option. But then when you look at a bunch of options, it's like, well, how do I pick the options? So, you got to kind of understand how it works. So I kind of look at it like there's two different paths. It's like the DIY path, which is fine. But the DIY path, you got to kind of immerse yourself in the books and read and understand all the options, not all the options, get a good handle on what the choices are so that you can confidently start to make choices and learn. Or you can kind of go the path of like seeking help. So that's more the people that tend to hire us. And those type of people I still think it's good to understand like the basics, like the philosophy, kind of like, a little bit of how it works, but like they're leaning on us in a lot of ways to help them kind of select, the best option for them.
So one of the things that physicians fear is failure. And we talk a lot about being perfect in our lives because of all the challenges and the things that have been required from us. And many people say at the same time, oh, but I can't do that. That should be easy, right? Because it's not like being a physician. But the thing is that I think it should be about a balance. So you're fearful of failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be like, if you're perfect all the time, like you will not do anything if you're just waiting for perfection to happen. And then you have somebody who's doing a job that you think, oh, I could learn that. Well, it turns out that job takes a long time to learn. And we see many physicians say, oh, I can do those investments on my own. And then that's when you kind of then you start failing some, like losing money because you really didn't study enough to be able to make those investments. And that's when somebody like Daniel really comes into play, where you can really take people and teach them how to read, a balance sheet, how to take a look at a deal and see what's going to be good or bad. Take a look at the pros and cons of any deal, and get you by the hand and really help you. So that you don't fail. And if, they cannot guarantee anything, as I understand, but they can certainly help you do the due diligence that we have to do on any deal that we do.
I think the way I look at it is like, Well, first of all, as you were talking, I was thinking of one of the books I love is Failing Forward. It's Maxwell book. I think you can't avoid failure. And, in a lot of ways, you can look at failure as opportunities, especially if you're kind of trying to learn something and do it yourself. And that's, pretty much inevitable failures along the way. But like when you're working with somebody, like a financial planner, like you can kind of like leverage someone else's. So like our experience with other people, you're kind of leveraging that, and it can kind of help accelerate, your opportunity to kind of make progress. But it's not for everybody. Like everybody is different. That's the beauty about people. It's like some people really love the idea of like immersing themselves in something and doing it themselves and digging in. And by all means, like keep doing that. Like that's your thing. That's great. But some people like get into it and they're like, oh, I got home from work and now I got to look at my finances. This is terrible. Like that kind of, situation, like you probably would benefit hugely from like a solid financial planner that can kind of help you through it, and get you to where you're, doing what you need to do to make, and the rewards are huge. I mean, the idea is we're trying to help people live a great life using money as a tool to live a great life. So, that's huge. If you can do that, it's a big deal. And ideally, and that's what a plan is. That's what a financial plan is helping you chart out the path to use money to live that good life.
So let's talk about, we know that, well, I think that matching your vision to your type of investment that you're going to do is very important. Like nothing is going to last if you don't match those two things. But separate from that, imagine that I have chosen, and anything can be under my vision, and it counts for everything. Which type of investments have you seen that physicians are making that give them the best return of investment if it goes along their values? Would you say like real estate type of deals? And within that, there's tons of things that people are doing. But, now it's 2022. Things evolve, things change. What sort of things have you seen that your clients are having the most success with once they're aligned values and investments?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people we work with, when you really sit and think about it, they don't want to get their hands dirty into things. Some people do that we work with, but the average person we work with does not really want to get like their hands dirty. And so what I'm talking about is like, they don't want to, if we're talking about real estate, for example, they don't really want to be the person that gets the call in the middle of the night to, plunge a toilet or whatever, or they don't want to kick people out if they don't pay rent. And that's kind of like the getting the hands dirty aspect.
So they want more like passive investments.
Passive, pure,
not active, passive investments.
Yeah. There's like, Rich is confusing to say it. It's like, which one is, so there's like, it's a spectrum, active versus passive, pure. They're more like, I don't really want to do anything if possible. So for those types of people, like just using, and they even call them passive funds, like passive index funds or whatever, like using investment vehicles that basically like buy the entire market. They're ultra low cost and they're fantastic, like historical, like performance wise relative to alternatives. Like they do extremely well given the fact that you're not getting your hands dirty at all. Those are kind of the ideal typically for that crowd. And even, going back to values, like sometimes people have things they want to screen for with their values and they can kind of select out things. Like, so say they don't want to invest in companies that like have, they just want clean energy or something like that. And they can kind of screen out some of that. So that's one category. On the other hand, if you do want to get your hands dirty, that kind of gets into like starting your own business. And that's a completely different flavor of investing. That typically has a fantastic rate of return, monetary rate of return, but life satisfaction rate of return as well. If you can like match up like doing something that you have a passion for and have more than just a financial reason. So that's kind of what it comes down to, especially the more active you get. And even passive, like there's got to be like something behind it. Like, what are you saving for? And that's kind of what we're going for on the front end. It's like, we need to understand, like, what's the purpose of this thing? Like, what are you saving for, or why are you doing it? And once we, have a good idea of that, like, that's really going to be the gasoline behind it. And people that have a passion for a business project, like you, I can tell you have a passion for what you do. That's huge. And that's going to provide fantastic results typically. And that's always a great starting point.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thanks. You have passion for what you do. You've been helping physicians. And tell us about the podcast that you're doing. What sort of things have you been teaching in your podcast?
Yeah, on our podcast, we kind of just go like more the academic. We do a little bit of stories and experts, pulling in experts as well, but like kind of the academic behind personal finance for physicians. So we'll cover, topics that basically we're working in our day jobs. So my day job is financial planner. We're doing like one-on-one work with physician families. In the podcast, we're just kind of we're talking about examples and stories and the academics behind all of that. And I think that's kind of the idea, is to provide good, like, foundational content that really anybody can benefit from. Whether they're a do-it-yourselfer or, not sure, or a lot of people that listen are already working with us and they just kind of want to further their knowledge. It's a lot of people are surprised. They think, the people that work with us are the ones that don't know a lot about personal finance, which is not true. Like, a lot of our clients are really solid on personal finance. Like, they have very solid financial understanding of how things work. They've just chosen to kind of, hire help. And so I'm always advocating for furthering education.
So let's say that I'm listening to this podcast and I'd like to know some things that I can specifically start doing right away today. Let's talk about specific tips that we can give our listeners if they want to engage in a healthy financial planning pathway.
Yeah, I think if you're ready and you're thinking that direction, I think it's good to, take a minute to sit and think, like, what's most important to me? Like, what do I want my life to look like in the future? One of my favorite questions to kind of think through is like, okay, let's say I'm 80 or 90 or I'm late stage in my life, taking like 15 minutes to just, kind of write down, like, say I'm 80 years old, I'm looking back on my life and I'm super excited. I'm pumped about how well things went. Like, life turned out great. I'm celebrating. Like, it was a great life. I was happy. Like, what sort of things had to happen along the way for that to play out? And, you just start writing down stuff and brainstorming. So you take a blank sheet of paper and, write down whatever comes to mind. That's kind of a, starting point to shaping out your values and your goals and what's most important. That's a good extra, I do it with myself, with clients, every so often. It's a great exercise to do. If you haven't done it in a while, or if you've never done it, especially, it's a great exercise to do to kind of start to clarify that. That's one thing. The second thing would be, I would suggest it would be good for everyone and anyone to start, tracking your net worth. This is a little bit more tactical and organizational, but like tracking your net worth. So what I mean by that is documenting your assets, which is stuff that you own of value, and the value of it at a specific date. So like a date stamped value of the asset, and then a date stamped value of debts or what you owe. And the difference between those two is your net worth. So like, I think getting in a habit of tracking your net worth every so often is just a really good, like, getting organized sort of step with your finances. And what happens over time is you start to be more aware of what you have, what you have to work with. And I think frequency wise, I mean, it's good if you haven't done it ever, like, do it now. And then maybe, I do it every month, but I'm also a financial planner. So maybe quarterly or something like that. You're just going in every so often to kind of update those values. Or if you're working with a financial planner, like, go through that with them every so often, make sure you're kind of aware of what you have and how it's changing.
So suppose that I'm not 80, but I'm in my 60s. I'm still 30 years out. My relationship is over. We're divorcing. And now my finances have drastically changed. Would I benefit still to come and see a financial planner?
I don't know. If you don't have a plan, I think that's the question. So if there's not a plan and you don't feel like you have traction, that's where there's huge benefit. So if everybody really, I mean, it seems like at the end of the day, we all have a life and we all want to, make it the best we can. And if you don't have a plan, no matter what your situation is, I think I would advocate for having a plan. Now, the question about hiring a financial planner versus just having a plan, that's kind of more of a decision as to whether you want to try to do it yourself or, work with somebody to help you. So I always suggest, like, everyone should have a financial plan and it should be written. And a financial plan is basically just like, what's most important to you? Where do you want to go? What do you have to work with? And then what are the steps you're going to take to get there? So everybody should at least have a financial plan that's well thought out, like everyone. And now if you're having trouble working through that process, or you're not feeling confident about it, or you're not executing or whatever, for whatever reason, that's when you really need a financial planner, because a financial planner is going to, like, help you through it, facilitate it, help with the decision making and the organization and all the aspects.
So you talked about determining your net worth, right? And there's different levels of net worth that will have us qualify for different types of investments. Can you explain to our audience what having a net worth of $250,000 versus $1 million versus $5 million could give you access to in terms of investments?
Yeah. So you're talking about like accredited investor.
Yes.
Yeah. So like if you are an accredited investor, that's like when your net worth is over a certain, I was looking up the values. It's income or net worth. So like your net worth has to be at least $1 million or more, and your income has to be 200,000 or 300,000 if you're married, and combined with spouse income. So basically, when you're an accredited investor, that opens up kind of like a new realm of investment opportunities that are only available. So like private investment deals, like there's a lot of deals, especially like not publicly traded companies. Publicly traded companies, so like buying stock in Apple, everybody can buy stock in Apple. But there's a whole bunch of like private deals that are, either startups or small businesses or whatever that require, you have to be an accredited investor to invest in it. And so you're not, until you have that level of net worth or income, you can't invest in it.
Exactly. So, and then even after you like have 1 million, those are things that are part of the planning. As I understand, you can plan, okay, I'm going to get to this level so that then I can get access to this type of investments. And then I can get to 3 million to 5 million. And depending on that, then you can get to different types of products. So This has been awesome. Daniel, thank you for helping our listeners with this information, wonderful information, especially if somebody's considering to have a financial planner. These are very important things that we have to do as part of the due diligence when we're trying to hire somebody like you in your position. So tell us where people can find you, where physicians can find you if we want to listen more about you or connect with you for our services. Especially if we're not in Kentucky.
Yeah. So we're 100% virtual. Like our one-on-one planning business, we work virtually. So it's cross country. But if you are looking for like educational content, that's where the podcast would be great. So it's financeforphysicians.co. That's the podcast. And we just cover, like I said, educational content and, all those sorts of things. So learning, that would be the direction I would point you in. As far as like one-on-one help, if you're considering that or want to go that direction, the business is called Wrenne Financial. So it's wrennefinancial.com. And that's where you can find us, find out information, or do like, no cost introductory calls, that sort of thing.
So Wrenne Financial would be WRENNE financial.com.
Yeah. WRENNE financial.com. And then if you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. The nice thing about having a last name that's spelled uniquely is I'm like the only, there's not very many people with that last name. So like I'm on LinkedIn. It's, you can search me, Daniel Wrene.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Any last words you want to share with our community before we say goodbye?
I think the number one thing I would emphasize is if you have made it through medical school, like you can completely dominate your finances, like that in itself, you can completely knock it out with this. It's not nearly as hard as medical school. In fact, it's more just a matter of realizing you can do it and taking a step, like a little tiny, even if it's like a little baby step. So it doesn't have to be a huge step. You don't have to like figure out all this finance stuff immediately. It's like, if you can start to, it's like any of these things in life, if you can take that little tiny step, that's the key. And then you can take another step and another step and another step. It's just like working out. It's just like a lot of these areas. It's about that habit.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Have a great day. And thanks for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more of our Design Your Physician Life podcast, which was brought to you today by our Maxillary Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. We will continue to bring you useful resources to develop your physician entrepreneur life, like we did today with Mr. Daniel Wrene from wrennefinancial.com. That is WRENNE financial.com. Thank you for joining us. We hope you had a great time as we did. Stay in touch with us. Visit our website, maxillure.com, MAXALLURE. And please don't forget to subscribe, like us, give us 5 stars, and share the love. Share with your friends and your family. See you later. Thanks. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.